I'm a woman in my early 40s. I often listen to the stories on this channel, and I have a similar story of mine. So when I listened to other stories, I could relate to them. I thought it'd be nice to share my story with you. I used to be so naive, thinking that all I needed for marriage was love without considering any other conditions. My husband and I met through an unpleasant car accident. I was a rookie driver, and I was so embarrassed and shocked that I couldn't even think of calling the insurance company at the scene of the accident. My husband, the victim, comforted me and told me that it was okay. He also told me I should go to the hospital even if I were not injured. And after the accident, we kept in touch. From my husband's perspective, it was understandable if he got angry and upset. But he cared about me, who just started driving A to Z. I was so sorry and grateful. This continued for 3 years, and our relationship changed from victim and perpetrator and to lovers and to a married couple. However, ironically, he was such a good man to me. But people around us didn't recognize his good side, not even my parents. My parents didn't tell me not to date him, but I could tell they didn't want me to become serious with him. But I was too into him and ignored their worries. And I felt both upset and frustrated. I decided to marry him before he proposed to me, thinking, how come everyone judges my husband based on something else, not the person himself? It was sort of me being rebellious. I didn't know I would regret it like this. My parents told me to give it another thought when I told them I'd marry him, but I was very determined. And when I told them I'd not marry anyone but him, they gave us their blessings. Because my husband's dad passed away when he was little, he lived with his mother until he married me. Now that I think of it, I think my parents were worried that I'd have to deal with the single mother-in-law by myself. But I was blinded by love and marriage. I never thought about it thoroughly. I just thought my husband loved his mom very much and is a good man. It'd be good to my parents and me. That thought was my biggest mistake. Anyway, my parents had no choice but to bless our marriage. Soon, I went to my husband's to get his mother's permission for our marriage. And that was the first day I met her. Unlike the worries, the first impression of the mother-in-law was gentle, so I felt relieved. My future mother-in-law warmly welcomed me and treated me to dinner with homemade food. She said perhaps because her only son brought a bride, she shed tears, saying she missed her late husband. With that as the start, she started talking about her late husband throughout the dinner. You might not like it if I say this before you get married, but you'll be one of my family soon enough. So let me tell you about our family a little. Is that okay? Yes, it's okay. I would have to know once I get married. Don't mind me. Please, tell me. Okay. I don't know if he told you, but your late father-in-law was a high-ranking government official before he passed away. I think if he didn't die then and lived until this day, he would be a local governor or congressperson by now. That's how gentle and straight person he was. He's a world's loss. Phew. Now that I think of him, it makes me cry. Why did heaven take him so fast? I still resent heaven. I didn't know anything at first, so I tried to understand her feelings. But now that I think of it, I think she wanted to mention her husband used to be a high-ranking government official, not because she misses him so much. After that day, she mentioned that her husband used to be so important whenever she had a chance. I should have noticed her intentions. I couldn't see the obvious things that I can see now. Darn love. I was full of love for my husband. I couldn't see my mother-in-law's intentions. I just thought about how much a person possibly loves someone that she can't let him go all this time. And because of that, when my husband asked me if we could live with her for about 2 years with his mother, as she'd be so lonely by herself without a husband, I didn't think it'd be a problem. I thought it'd be fine. Sure, 2 years is soon enough. She's been living with you for so long. I would also feel bad if she was left alone. Thank you, honey. My mom would love it too. I didn't tell you, but my mom loves you so much. She said you're just like her own daughter. Please have pity on my mom and be good to my mom. I'll be good to your parents too, and of course, to you too. Of course, she's now my mother too. Let's not divide our families into 2 sides and be good to all of them. Thank you so much, honey. I really feel like I got the whole world to myself by marrying you. I know he said it just to make me feel good, but I loved it how it sounded. So when my parents went against my life with the mother-in-law, I convinced them every day with everything I could. And finally, we had our wedding and started our newlywed life at my mother-in-law's house. My foolish expectations and thoughts began to diverge from then on. It worsened day by day. Of course, she wasn't like that at the very beginning. I can't believe how naturally it went the wrong way. About a month after the wedding, my contract ended with the company that I used to work for, so I took a break unwillingly. Ever since then, my mother-in-law made me do housework little by little and almost every day. I didn't have any doubts until then. I've been doing housework for over 3 months, and one day, my mother-in-law gave me an absurd request. Hey, isn't this my son's? Don't machine wash this, but wash it with your hands. A man has to be treated from home to be successful at work. Besides, my son is a son of a high-ranking government official, and he is the only son of 3 generations. Don't you think you need to pay more attention to him when you're not doing anything at home? Ellen, this is just a t-shirt, and I'm not playing around. I'm always working like this at home. I want to work at a company too. To do so, I need some time to search and apply for a job. Hey, why do you talk so much? I know things are different for your generations, but I am still your mother-in-law, and you're a daughter-in-law. Are you talking back to me right now? Are you playing dumb with me? Things have changed. What makes her think it's okay to call her daughter-in-law hey? It was ridiculous and absurd. And we've been putting everything onto the washing machine ever since I moved in, except the ones that need to be dry cleaned. Now she's so angry about it. At that moment, I couldn't find any words to say. It was so ridiculous and unpleasant. So I told my husband about what happened when he came back from work. But as people say, birds of a feather, he made it even worse. My mom usually hand washes things. I'm sure she wanted to say it over and over again after seeing how you do things, but she held it in. Please understand. Let's just do whatever she tells us to do while we live here, and you can do whatever you want to do once we move out. Don't feel hurt or take it too seriously, okay? Even though my husband said so, I couldn't understand. How she acted was not from a person who's been so patient for so long. Is this why people say husbands are on the other sides and in-laws never can be my own? I had all sorts of thoughts in my mind. Ever since that day, she worsened. When my husband went to work, she made me do everything and more. I thought I would never stop loving my husband, but such a mother-in-law and situation forced me to do so. It's getting cold. Go to the market and buy some beef bones. My son has beef soup every winter, so he doesn't suffer from the cold. He's the only son of 3 generations and of a high-ranking government official. Make sure you make the soup yourself and feed him. Got it? Hey, don't you know my son's respiratory system is weak? If you clean like this, who's gonna breathe in all the dust? What the heck did you learn from your parents? Didn't your parents pay enough attention to you, running that booger-sized store? Gosh, if my husband's here with us, Brian wouldn't have married a woman like you. My mother-in-law didn't stop at saying bad things about me, but didn't mind speaking ill of my parents. As she said, my parents run a store in our hometown. It's not that small that she can call it a booger-sized. And the building itself is my father's. So, if I compared the financial state, my family was doing so much better than my husband's. Of course, my mother-in-law and my husband didn't know the building was my dad's, as I didn't tell them. Does it make sense to treat my family wrong because their late father-in-law was a high-ranking government official? And he's not even alive right now. So, I didn't hold it in that day. I vented out on her. If I didn't, it felt like I was doing wrong to my parent. Ellen, you're crossing the line. They paid much attention to me and showed me so much love while running their store. Do you think teaching how to use house appliances means love? Then, how come Brian doesn't know how to use them? From now on, watch what you're saying. My gosh, what did you say? Who do you think you are? Me? You're the one who's been so rude. And if you don't like how I work, you can do them yourself. I'll work at a company. I guess everyone needs to do what she's good at. I don't think I'll ever satisfy you in 1,000 days. What? I don't know if she was pretending or not, but she collapsed after screaming at me. Then she went, My gosh, honey, she's looking down on me because you are not here with you. She's gonna kill our precious son. Oh, my blood pressure. I might come to see you tonight. She cried like crazy. I thought these things happened only on TV. I started to think it'd be difficult to live with her for 2 full years. And at the right time, I got pregnant, which I thought was a reasonable reason to move out of the house. So, the day I told my husband I was pregnant, I carefully talked to him about moving out. Honey, as I am pregnant, and I'll start my morning sickness soon, I don't think it's a good idea to stay here with your mother. Why not? Don't you think it'd be better to stay with her? Besides, when the baby is born, the mom can help you with postpartum care, and she can also take care of the baby. Your mom would be busy with the store. I think it'd be better this way. My husband didn't know what was going on and kept saying that it'd be better for me to stay with his mother because I was pregnant. I couldn't tell him that I didn't want to stay here as his mother was the source of the stress. I had to take it in by myself. Now that I think of it, it sounds foolish, but I didn't want my relationship with the mother-in-law to influence the relationship with my husband. Then I thought, I'm pregnant now, and she's taking such a good care of his only son, and I could bring another son to him. I had the expectation that she would treat me differently now. Unlike my expectations, she made me clean and hand-wash laundry as usual. She even said, I did everything just as usual when I was pregnant, making food and boiling soup all night. When I was suffering from morning sickness, she told me not to think about slacking off with an excuse. But still, when my husband came home, she changed 180 degrees. One day, she told me she was going out to meet her friends, but told my husband to go eat dinner outside with her as I had a hard time making food from morning sickness. I couldn't take it anymore. Honey, do you know how I live nowadays? I'm washing all your clothes by hand, and your mom's not even touching the vacuum cleaner. I'm suffering from morning sickness, but she's making me make the food that she wants to eat. And she told you that she wants to eat outside because she's worried about me? Why do I have to live like this? I'm tired. I didn't marry you to live like this. What are you talking about? I know you're tired because you're pregnant, but you shouldn't lie. My mom cares about you so much, and my mom is a mom. Why are you so rude to her? And even if what you're telling me is true, is it so hard to do what she's asking you when you're a daughter-in-law? What? Do you hear yourself? I should do those because I'm a daughter-in-law? Yes, I can, if she's reasonable. But I'm also a precious daughter at home. Do you think it's okay to treat me like a servant because I'm a daughter-in-law? Choose your word wisely. I'm tired too. I guess you're like this because you're not working anymore. I'm tired from work and I have to listen to your nagging when I come home. So what? Do you want me to tell my mom that we'll move out because she's giving us a hard time? Would you leave me alone then? If you couldn't do it, you should have said so from the beginning. What is this? When I saw my husband blaming me, I felt like I had been hit hard in the back of my head. Did I count any other condition before we got married? All I needed was him and his love. But now that I see myself, I understand why everyone stopped me from making hasty decisions. I couldn't find any of his sweetness before the marriage. He was taking my words as nagging, not even trying to understand my hardships. I felt so bad about myself. If I wasn't pregnant, I wanted to divorce him right away. But I had a baby in me, and I had to raise the child by myself. Then, I would have to ask my parents for help in many ways. I thought I would divorce him if I just couldn't take him anymore after putting up with him a couple more times because it was a marriage that I went against my parents' warning. When my thoughts reached that point, I naturally couldn't get along with anyone, and I became a loner. I think it was then when I started. Ever since then, I have had depression that I didn't know all my life. My mother-in-law criticized me, saying, "You twisted your own faith." My husband looked at me pitifully, saying that depression is a disease that comes to a person who has no worries. My belly was getting bigger, and I had no one to rely on. I didn't know if I was married or came to this family to work for them. Then one day, I couldn't get up in the morning as I wasn't feeling well. My husband, who needs to eat breakfast before going to work, asked me to make him breakfast. He said he was not feeling well from drinking the night before. I told him to go to work without breakfast for just one day as I was so sick. But instead of going work, he went to his mother and told her to make him breakfast, saying that I was not making him one. Then, the mother-in-law rushed into my room and splashed cold water on my face. I was shocked and helpless. I jumped off the bed. When things got bad because of him, my husband went to work as if he was running away. But the mother-in-law didn't stop there. When she saw her son going to work without having breakfast, went crazy and yelled at me. "How dare you starve my precious son? Do you think you can still live in my house? I don't need a daughter-in-law like you. Get out." I got kicked out of the house in my pajamas. It was in the middle of January, and I was sick, and I had cold water all over me. I can't even describe how cold I was then. I begged my mother-in-law to at least hand me a jacket and a wallet, but she didn't open the door. Eventually, I collapsed on the street, shaking in the cold. A person who was passing by called an ambulance, and I was moved to an emergency. When I woke up, my child had already left me. The guilt of not being able to protect my child as a mother and the anger toward my husband and mother-in-law who caused all this literally swallowed me. I decided to divorce my husband without looking back and never going back to that damn house. I told everything to my parents, who came to the hospital shocked at once. I told them what had happened to me and what I had to go through. My parents told me that they thought I didn't call them so often because I was having such a good time as a newlywed, forgetting about my parents. My mom cried, and my dad made a big scene saying that he'd never forgive them. When the mother-in-law found out my dad was looking for her, angry, she ran away. My husband also didn't come to the hospital as he was afraid that my dad would get him. I just laughed as I was despondent, thinking that those were the family and husband that I had lived with all this time. I even thought that my baby had left me because he didn't want to live with such people. I told my parents I'd divorce him. It'd be stupid not to divorce him in this situation. I was released from the hospital and went to my parents' house, and 2 months passed by. I guess my husband and the mother-in-law thought I would divorce him right away. But as I didn't say anything for about 2 months, they must have thought that I didn't think about divorcing him. The mother-in-law sent me an absurd text message. "This is enough. I'm running out of patience. A daughter belongs to the husband's house once she's married. Just come home right now. Did you reflect on yourself enough?" Reflect on myself? I was done with the mother-in-law's rude attitude and the husband who didn't call me until then. So, I called him to ask for a divorce. He said he understood and told me to get his stamp on the divorce papers and get my stuff from his house. I said I would and went to his house, where I never wanted to go back, with the papers that night. The mother-in-law looked at me sideways and threw a TV remote control as soon as she saw me. I was angry, so I picked it up and threw it back at her. My gosh, look at her. This is why home discipline is so important. What have your parents done, not sending you back home? Right. They must be so busy with that little tiny store. They don't care about you, right? Hey, I think I told you this before. They love me very much. Would you like to see this? I threw the envelope with a real estate register in it, like how I threw the remote control at her. Then my mother-in-law opened the envelope asking what did I bring to her to be so proud. The mother-in-law, who didn't know the building that our store is at is my parents', trembled her hand and lost her word. I thought it was my turn to pay her back. See? My parents gave me a building saying I have nothing to worry about after the divorce. Talking about home discipline, how about your son? He made a fuss about not making breakfast. His son died because of his mom. Do you think he feels guilty at all? It was then. My husband came into the house and saw us fighting. He sighed and was about to stamp the divorce document I had brought. The mother-in-law snatched the paper from him and ripped it. Mom, what are you doing? Don't get divorced. Never divorce her. Mom, I'm so sick and tired of this. I can't live like this. No, look at this. Their store is not just a store. Did you know? Did you know the building is your in-laws? And they gave that building to her. Why? Why would you divorce her? She has the building. So what? Now that she has a building, do you think I need to be loyal to her and not divorce her? Who told you to be loyal? Just don't divorce her. They whispered, but I could hear every single word. It was ridiculous and I was speechless. Whether he stamps this or not, he'll get divorced. Because I'll file a lawsuit if he doesn't stamp it. And you kicked me out in the middle of that cold winter and you made me lose my child. Don't you think this is enough for a lawsuit? I can put this online and send it to his company too. I have nothing to be scared of now. I already lost my child and there's nothing that can stop me. Do you really want me to ruin your precious son's life? Oh my gosh, look at her how she has changed now that she has money. This is how she treats me because your dad is not by my side. My gosh, honey. Ellen, go ahead and hide in the late father-in-law's shades for the rest of your life. Have I ever treated you badly? Think how you treated me. Do you really want to bring this to the course? That's enough. Stop now. I'll divorce you as you wish. We will. And I have to say this. You're a coward. If you mediated well from the beginning, we wouldn't have to lose our baby like that. Don't you feel ashamed at all? That's why we're getting divorced. It's hard for me to watch you like this, too. I regret how this happened. My husband asked me to go to court the next day to fill out the divorce papers and submit them right away. Then, the mother-in-law who was pulling on my husband's pants screamed that he should not get the divorce. When I saw her, I regretted living with them all that time like a fool. Eventually, we got divorced. The marriage was short, but I finally ended the worst marriage that I never wanted to go back to. Right after the divorce, I guess the mother-in-law couldn't admit that I was not her family anymore. She called me so many times. One day, she would scream at me saying that I made her precious son a divorcee, and another day, she apologized to me saying that she spent lots of time reflecting on herself and that she wants to get along with me now. She was just like a bipolar person. I was scared she would do something bad to me, so I changed my phone number. After that, I enjoyed my true freedom. I was able to get a job as if I was being compensated for the time I had lost. This time, it was a full-time job instead of being a contract. Since I had no siblings, my dad planned to give it to my mother and then inherit it to me later. I guess he had his hunch. He told me that he thought I should have something reliable. So he talked to my mom and inherited it to me. The monthly rental fee came from the building my parents gave me, and there was also an empty space for me to start a store. But I thought I preferred to work at a company with other people. I missed myself working at a company while I was staying at home, not working at a company. So, I just took the name of the building and gave the monthly fee back to my parents. I mean, that was the right way to go. Now, I have the same routine every day, but the small happiness that I got back is just so precious to me. Now, I'll never ever let this happiness go. I'll keep the promise to myself for my baby who went to heaven. Thank you for listening to my story until the end. It makes me feel much better to share my story in my favorite place. I'll pray that you have healthy happiness without any pain. Please leave your words of support and wise advice in the comment section. Likes and subscriptions help me a lot. Have a wonderful day, everyone.